Hi, I'm Cynthia Schiller. Please like and subscribe. I also have Facebook now. If you type in A Soul Survivor, please join the community. But we're going to talk about the social and emotional abuse that we can go through. More commonly, the emotional abuse. It affects us in society, but it can happen to anybody. And it's when we're under a prolonged period of time where we're being abused. And our narcissists love to do that. So we tend to lose our self-confidence, our self-concept, how we feel about ourselves, even our motivation. And a lot of it is just who we are as an individual. And a lot of times it relates to domestic violence, whether it's through child abuse or abuse through partners. Sometimes it's accompanied by physical abuse. So keep your body safe, remove yourself from these situations. If you're leaving a narcissist, have people with you, or maybe call in the cops if you need somebody to make sure it's safe. There are ways to handle these situations for the best outcome. But as we go through the verbal abuse, that can be sometimes more damaging than a slap or things like that, because it's prolonged. Healing takes longer, and it's going to take some effort on our parts to get through this. So sometimes we start to blame ourselves, and emotional abuse with children can affect their development, whether it's cognitive, social, psychological, even behavioral. And it can be detrimental and long lasting. It causes a bunch of health issues, brain damage, but the different types of emotional abuse. It can be anything from being neglected or feeling rejected, where you don't have a comfort or a safe place. Sometimes they'll make us isolate, whether it's through the silent treatment or we just kind of withdraw on our own. There can be abusive expectations, whether it's high demands that are almost impossible. Sometimes they're unfair. They give us a lot of criticism. So even when we try to do our best, we're cut down. It's painful to be ignored. They love to do that. And they'll deny things, whether it's sexual or whether they refuse to listen or try to understand what we're going through. We're just trying to communicate with them. We're trying to make it better. You got to bring things to the table to know what you're working on. But they love that constant chaos, and that leaves us uncomfortable. We start walking on eggshells. Sometimes narcissists will exploit us, whether it's for sex or money, attention. There's often aggression that happens. They can blame or threaten. A lot of times there's emotional blackmail that they'll do to us, to where we feel trapped. Maybe they're talking about like a smear campaign, telling your secrets to people, to whether it's going to damage your job or your relationships with your kids. Often narcissists are dominating. They use verbal assaults, whether it's sarcasm or berating. They start to cut us down. One of the biggest things I went through was the invalidation, to where you're not allowed to talk. How are things going to get better if you can't talk through them? If you can't relate to each other or compromise, you start to feel helpless in those situations. That's a terrible feeling, to feel helpless within your own life, within your own realm of your household. Narcissists will have very unpredictable behavior, so you don't know what's going to happen. You don't know how to approach them. They'll have quick mood changes, emotional outbursts, sometimes at the drop of a hat. And often with emotional abuse, it's not like physical abuse where you can see the actual damage that is done. So often it can go undiagnosed, misdiagnosed, or overlooked or neglected. Sometimes people think, well, yeah, that's just a normal marriage. You're just complaining about this one thing, when they don't know the whole picture. We often minimize things. We do the cognitive dissonance, where we have two conflicting things and we often minimize it. Because we feel a guilt that we don't want to harm our partner or say bad things about them. But it's not unusual for our abuser to display their abusive characters, and that causes us to either feel humiliated, And they'll do that in front of other people. And so we're not even safe going out in public. Um, there's no safe place for us. We get abused at home, out in public. They'll destroy opportunities because they love to knock us down. They kind of get a kick out of it. Sometimes they think it's funny, or they'll do it for their own satisfaction, to where, if we're working too many hours, they'll get us fired or let go in some way, just so they get their needs met. Um, uh, so emotional abuse often goes unreported or unrecognized. And there's different types of abuse. Everyone's different. And it'll start to cause us to stop leading a normal life. And that's where we have to be really, really cautious is we have one life. We have one life. And a lot of us are ruminating or being depressed, wasting a lot of our good years over just being sad. And I understand it. I totally get it. But some of the signs that we might have are feelings of depression. We'll start to withdraw from social interactions. It kind of knocks down our self-esteem. And, when we start isolating from our friends and family, that just reinforces that low self-esteem. We feel like nobody's there for us. We start to become fearful. We don't know whether it's our narcissist. Are they going to leave us? Are they going to destroy our relationships or networks with people? We just don't know what the future holds. So sometimes we contemplate, should we stay in this? It's our safe spot, even though it's not safe. We're just used to it. And sometimes it's a hassle, or we don't have enough money, or we fear what others will think of us. But we got to think about our mental health. You deserve to have a great life. We're going to start to feel anxious. And that's where all of a sudden this trauma bond starts forming. And, narcissists usually discard. So if you're starting to go through these things, it's almost like once that devaluation stage sets in, it's never going to be the same. The narcissist is just being themselves. And that's what you're starting to see. We're going to start to have guilty feelings. We're going to feel like something's wrong with us, that we cause these things. So we start to feel shame. We start to have mood swings now. Sometimes that's because we're not sleeping the right way. We have this nervous feeling. We don't know how to approach our person. Other signs of emotional abuse, we stop trusting people because we've been hurt. We're hypersensitive and overcautious. It's good to be cautious, but to where some of us start self-isolating, or we don't want to ever date again. That's not a healthy way to live. We're start doing some like self-blaming, pessimistic behavior. We're going to be down in the dumps thinking nothing's ever going to get better. Some of you, hopefully you don't dabble in substance or drug abuse. Be careful on the alcohol that you don't overdo it. And sometimes we start to be extremely needy, because the narcissist kind of trained our mind to be in this codependent state, or a state of need, or they make us feel so worthless that we feel they're our only hope. And we start needing to latch on to someone. So maybe we're taking too much time from our friends or family, and they're starting to get overwhelmed, and that's destroying that relationship. A lot of us sometimes will avoid eye contact. The eyes are the pathway to the soul, and we just are hurt inside, and we kind of don't want people to see what's inside. Or if you're at the store, you're depressed, you don't want to make eye contact, then maybe your neighbor at the store might talk to you, and we just start wanting to be alone. And often we might tell lies, whether it's, yeah, I'm doing good, things are great, would you do this weekend? We might make something up just because we don't want to explain that we just cried all weekend. Some of you, you're going to start to get these adrenaline rushes. You might start having aggressive behavior. It can cause emotional instability. And one of the scariest things is sometimes people, after you've gone through emotional abuse, some of you do think about suicide. And there is a suicide hotline. Therapists are available. That is something you don't want to dabble in. Right now, my aunt is in the ICU for suicide attempts. It's nothing to mess with. It's sad to think how sad some people get over different things that cause depression. And now she is a psychiatrist, and she deals with all these negative people, all these things that are going on in her life or their lives. And it starts to bring you down. Um, and that's why suicide attempts are very high among certain careers, because when you surround yourself with people who are either negative or taking away from your happiness, um, it can be overpowering and can be overwhelming to where you don't know how to settle your heart. And that's why it's so important to not continue on in these relationships, because whether it costs your life metaphorically, where you're isolated, you're not doing anything, you don't feel good, you don't feel like yourself, you're missing out on life, you're not spending time with your kids, or thinking about an actual suicide. So please reach out to those suicide helplines. But the ultimate outcome of this emotional abuse by our abuser is that the abuser wants us to be scared, to be alone. So we latch on to them. But they get it to the point where they're so entitled, they think that we're not going to leave. Sometimes they do want to move on to a new supply, just because they don't know how to handle the situation. It just gets out of hand because we, in the reactive abuse, come back at them, because in their perfect picture of everything going right, they abuse us, they get their supply. But when we try to communicate with things, it's us reacting to the abuse. And when we do that, they see the abuse. And depending on how we react is whether we're the right kind of fuel for them. Just like, certain trucks, you need diesel or you need gasoline, and it just depends on what your narcissist needs. They signed up for the fuel got them by, and then it's just not enough for the right type. It's just a clean slate with the new supply, but they're going to still do their same cycle. The emotional abuse is something that's inherent in their soul. It's the survival technique that they created, and they need that chaos. So it'll only get worse. It doesn't get better. There's going to be ups and downs, which gets confusing because we think they're starting to work on it. But we don't want to get worse. We want our mental health to get better. There's emotional, psychological disorders. And if you ever are abused, or if you notice somebody that's being abused, have them or have yourself help some support services. There are some things on Facebook, these communities on YouTube where we have our feelings validated makes a big difference. But the best way for us to prevent this emotional abuse is through our own personal awareness. We need to keep our boundaries. We need to walk away when it's time to. It's okay to try. There's nothing wrong with that. But if nothing is going to get better, the cycle is just going to continue. So don't feel trapped in these situations. Try your best, but if it gets to the point where it's just not getting better, you're worth it. You're worth a fresh start. You're worth somebody who's going to be there for you. We have one life, and everybody needs love, respect, and trust. And a lot of times we get confused on, did they love us? But we know for sure that they didn't respect us, and we couldn't trust them. We couldn't trust them with our emotions. We couldn't trust them with time commitments. And you never knew which end was up. So that are some of the signs and symptoms of emotional abuse. If you're struggling with that, there's a lot of free support services, depending on your insurance, or maybe some jobs have certain mental health things where you can get a few visits a year or every 6 months. Just something to think about, because there is some brain damage that goes on, and you don't want your whole life to fall apart over one person. One person is not worth that. And it'd be nice if it was easier to spot, then people could kind of understand a little bit more. But definitely, watch out for our children too. Our children are our future, and there's a lot of emotional abuse going on. It seems to be getting worse and snowballing out of control. So let's take care of each other. Please feel free to like and subscribe. I'll see you in the next video. One-on-ones are available. See you soon.